The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is part of my expert panel, just Anna today. How are you, Anna?
I am good. How are you, Elliot?
Better now. Just getting things going as usual. You know the drill.
Yeah, actually today is a special day because it's my mom's birthday, and now she's watching the Raben Report every time that the show comes live. So, feliz cumpleaños, mamá. Enjoy your day. She probably would watch it later on.
Wow. Well, happy birthday to your mom, of course. And amazing that she's watching from Venezuela, right?
Yeah, she doesn't understand what we are saying, but she still watches.
Well, we are so thankful that she's tuning in. Happy birthday to your mom. And of course, joining the show once again this week is good friend Zehavi Zynoberg. How are you?
Fabulous. It's also my sister's birthday.
Oh my God, really? Happy birthday to your sister too.
I'm sure she says thank you in spirit. She's in Montreal, not Venezuela, but good enough.
Well, clearly it's a whole big party going on over here. I don't really have anybody with birthdays in my family today, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's where we are right now. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be talking about our main topic, U.S. Election 2020 Debrief. But first, let's take a look at our top stories in our weekly update, starting with Whole Foods. So they banned the poppy, which, not a good look. They faced a lot of backlash on it. And it was just, I don't even...
I think it was like, okay, I think that they had a confusion to start with. First of all, it's a U.S. company when you look at it. And I read that the corporate decision actually came from the U.S., which means that there is a confusion going on. Like, taking the poppies, like not letting people wear their poppy is like a bad marketing strategy and a bad HR strategy. And we could see that most of Canadians dislike that decision. Like when that news came out, like there was an outrage going on, Even people from the conservative side or liberals, they agree on that. Like it is just bad.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that a one-size-fits-all policy doesn't work. Tomorrow is Remembrance Day, and for them to say you can't wear poppies because it goes against their dress code. I mean, they also didn't allow people to wear BLM stuff, but the poppies. I mean, Zehavi, what do you think? Do you find it disrespecting to veterans?
It's not only disrespectful, it's a PR disaster gone wrong completely. There was condemnation from political parties and politicians of all stripes. I mean, I always expected the conservatives and the liberals to not tolerate this sort of policy, but I was pleasantly surprised to see it was condemned from all sides, including the NDP, which typically I would expect a less sort of, traditional method of remembrance to sort of be carried on by a party that tends to, they want to take down statues and this and that. But yeah, PR disaster gone wrong.
And people are saying that they're not going to recover from this. I mean, for them to do such a thing, for the mayor of Toronto, for the prime minister, for all the parties, like you said, to condemn it, you think they're ever going to be able to recover? I don't.
I didn't know there was Whole Foods in Canada to begin with. Well, I knew that. I knew that there was. I just didn't know how many people really shopped there because I don't know who wants to pay $30 for an apple.
Not as many now.
Not as many
Even
now.
less.
Yeah. But I also find there's a fine line between banning companies from establishing their own rules. So I think that's a dangerous line to go down to in terms of that. But for the poppy, this is something these people fought for our freedoms and for our right to vote. Since we're talking about the election today, so they deserve our respect and our honor every single day of the year.
And there was a veteran who was interviewed on CTV. He said that he felt like this was a spit and a slap in the face. I mean, do you think they're going to recover, Anna?
I'm not sure. Like they probably are going crazy with their marketing team right now. Like you can bet. And another thing is that like it was an entire confusion because okay, you have Black Lives Matter, but once again, like the Remembrance Day is different. It's like a Canadian history. It's like part of a cultural thing. It's tradition. Like it is something that involves. It's not a political and a social cause like Black Lives Matter. It's completely different. It's like I don't know. You're banning Thanksgiving Day, something like that. It's ridiculous. It was just bad.
It's Again, I'm shocked. So as you can see, we're wearing poppies on the show today to pay respect to Remembrance Day tomorrow. Obviously, ceremonies won't be in person this year. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of virtual ceremonies. But let's move on to something in sad news. Alex Trebek has passed away at the age of 80. He was the host of Jeopardy since 1984, and he was actually contracted to host until 2022. This has had a huge impact on the world. People of all stripes in terms of politics, in terms of professions, they've all come out and they're just so upset. What kind of impact did he have on you guys, if any?
Well, if I'm honest with you, I never saw that show. Like, I don't think we got it back in Venezuela. So I will let you guys take the lead on this.
Yeah.
Zehavi?
I grew up watching Jeopardy in Thornhill. It's not quite Venezuela, but in the cable Zynoberg household with the bunny ears antennas. That was one of the few channels we got was that showed Jeopardy every night at 7:30, I think it was. So Alex Trebek is a Canadian household icon. His passing is unfortunately very sad, and the circumstances behind it are certainly very sad. I believe it was the same cancer that killed John McCain,
Pancreatic cancer,
and Rob Ford, I believe. I don't know about that, but it's a very sad and very, very, very sad story. And it's hard to see how he'll be replaced as the host on the show. That's what I'm really gonna look forward, because they already had to sort of signal a sort of replacement for him as his illness was getting worse.
Yeah, and even though they were looking for a replacement, like you said, he was contracted until 2022, and he did record a bunch of episodes before his passing. The last one he recorded was 10 days.
And I think it's enough for them to go till
Christmas Day. That's when the last episode of Jeopardy is going to air. Now, unfortunately, because Christina isn't here, she's not able to say what she feels about Alex Trebek, but what she has passed along is that she feels he is such a sweet, soft-spoken man, or he was rather, and he taught her so much random knowledge, interesting knowledge. She also adds that she is his number one fan and that everybody should go watch episodes of Jeopardy on Netflix. Lastly, of course, she thinks that he is the most unproblematic and uncancelable person. So we did an episode on cancel culture. I think we all believe that no matter how you look at him, he was just a great guy.
Amen.
So, lastly, we're going to move on to a coronavirus update. And we hit another record, guys. I don't know whether to celebrate or to cry. We hit over 1,100 cases in Ontario. And now the province has created a new tracking color-coded system per region. Toronto is still in the worst position, whereas Peel is in, I believe, the red zone, and York region is in the orange zone. So some stuff is opening back up. And what do you guys think about these soaring cases?
there's been a communications problem, I think, from the beginning with not just the provincial government, but all three levels of government. And I think that's a given the nature of how, you learn new things so quickly with this virus, because it's a novel virus. So, but the color coding system to me has been really confusing. I think also the sort of how they're passing along different responsibilities. So today, the chief medical officer of Toronto, Dr. Zavila, she's sort of now she's suggesting that there's going to be even a harsher restrictions being put out. Doug Ford suggests something else. It's really mixed messaging, and I just really want to go to the gym. I'm cool with no fitness classes. I'll be myself, away from everybody else. I really want to go to the gym.
I mean, could just do it over Zoom like I did for 5 months.
I've tried doing the virtual gym. It's not the same.
No? Well, there are some gyms that are operating outside, right?
I don't know how long how they'll plan on doing that in the winter, though.
Exactly, because right now, well, this week has been very interesting when it comes to weather, because it feels like it's still kind of like summer-like. I see people wearing shorts, wearing sleeveless shirts. Like, it is very interesting. But getting back to coronavirus, well, I don't know how long this can continue. I have read some news about the vaccine. For example, Pfizer says that they have a vaccine that could be available. On the other hand, I also read about Brazil, that they were trying the Chinese vaccine, and apparently the side effects are not that great, so they stopped the testing in Brazil of the vaccine. So I don't know. Until this point, I think Pfizer vaccine will be the best choice according to the news.
That's the one that seems to have gotten the most attention this week, I think, because it claims to have 90% efficacy. But again, you gotta wait until it's ready to roll out. It seems promising, though, because they said early 2021, which I had heard things as far as 2022. So look, the sooner the better.
Yeah, and like you said, the levels are confusing. Kobe says Toronto just moved to red. Again, we don't really know what that means in many respects. I mean, in some cases, that means that indoor dining is allowed at capacity, I believe. I
don't understand, like, if cases are increasing, how are they going to allow indoor dining? Like,
well, what's interesting is that at one point they didn't allow indoor dining, but they allowed outdoor dining under a tent.
Yeah. So, indoor dining outside, as long as it's not inside.
Basically, yeah.
And then they said, go to school, but don't go see family. I mean, do you feel like the government is kind of acting odd in their fight to end coronavirus right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way they do this is because they don't want to pass the barrier where people are just going to piss off generally. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it was in Italy that Italy has this crazy situation with coronavirus some months ago, and the government is trying to impose more restrictions, and Italians just went outside and started protesting and being angry. And I guess the government here is like trying to, kind of balance that situation, but I don't know how that's going to work from a policy perspective, how effective that's going to be.
Yeah, it's very interesting how things are going right now, but now let's move on to our main topic, which is the U.S. election 2020 debrief. Last week, we brought you a 2-hour live election special. Unlike 2016, we didn't get a conclusive result of the winner on the night of. Only 4 days later, on Saturday, November 4th, Joe Biden was declared the presumptive next president of the United States, following a lead in Pennsylvania. Later that night, Joe Biden and his Vice President Kamala Harris gave rousing victory speeches. However, Trump has yet to concede and has said that he will launch lawsuits in key states, which means this thing is far from over. On tonight's show, we break down the results of this election, examine Trump's response, and finally look at what a Joe Biden presidency may look like. As a reminder, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. So let's start with what were the final results. We actually have them on screen. Let's pull them up. Here we go. So the final results, according to most news organizations, were that Joe Biden won 279 electoral college votes and Donald Trump won 214, whereas 45 are remaining. Some states that were called, specifically Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, were called for Joe Biden. But as you can see, they have not finished their votes, but they're counting. Same thing with Pennsylvania. Arizona is still hasn't been called. Alaska is at 61%. What were some of the key states that changed the election, and how did they do that?
Basically, Joe Biden won back what Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump in the Rust Belt. So in the Midwest, Pennsylvania was the tipping point at this point to pushing Joe over the 270 majority mark. But it was key also African American support, Black women, and they were, I think, over 92% to whatever, I think it's 8. For Biden, and they are a very consistent, loyal voting base. So they represent states that typically were red. Georgia, Arizona, those are no blue states by any stretch of the imagination traditionally.
Yeah, actually, the case of Georgia is an example of what you mentioned. Like Black women, they basically, according to the results, they were a factor that made this state that is traditionally red to have a chance of going blue. But right now, if you look at Georgia, it's still, they are still undecided, you could say. Like, okay, right now, Joe Biden is 49.52%, but Trump is like very close to that too.
Now, you mentioned Black voters, somebody who's very influential in that, and there's a lot of media attention towards her, is a woman named Stacey Abrams. She had a lot of influence in Georgia, and I'm curious to know how and why you think that is. What did she do?
She ran for governor. She was the first Black woman to run for governor, I think, in Georgia's history, and it was basically the result was basically a draw between her and her opponent, who was administering the elections because he was the Secretary of State for the state of Georgia while he was running against her. So take from that what you will about corruption, Donald Trump supporters. But what I will say about the whole notion about Stacey Abrams is she took her loss. And she was a little bitter about it, and I'd be too. And she used it and she turned it into action to register, I think, 1 million people in Georgia to vote. I don't think it was concentrated towards Black voters, but I'm sure there's a lot of them in Atlanta. And I think that was key to why you're seeing Joe Biden succeed in Georgia, because of the very populous major cities which have a lot of liberal, young, and diverse voters.
And she did try to be his VP pick, but that obviously didn't pan out. Anna?
Well, according to what I've read, she also applied a strategy where she used to gather, especially with other Black women, and motivate them to vote. She basically motivated people that was not engaged politically as much to vote, to register, to vote. And that's one of the, she basically did a job of, going after the voters. That's a strong political activism, and that caused this change. Also, I don't know exactly if if Donald Trump wins or lose in Georgia is because of corruption. I also think that the protests of Black Lives Matter have things to do in Georgia. Like, for example, one of my friends, he lives in Atlanta, and he told me that many Black-owned business were also looted by people from Black Lives Matter. Like, when you see that kind of extremist behavior, some people will be like, I don't want to be part of this,
Interesting, Zehavi.
Even without Georgia and Arizona, He's past 270. It's really, I think, Pennsylvania that the Trump campaign, at least, is very insistent that there was shady things going on. They have no evidence to back up their claims of voter corruption. This is how you count mail-in votes. If anything, it was a lost opportunity for the Republicans to encourage their supporters to vote by mail, because they obviously were motivated because they turned out on election day. So this, to me, is just bad strategy on the part of the Republican Party.
Well, when it comes to like evidence of fraud or something, in the case of Pennsylvania particularly, there was a postal worker who did an affidavit, a sworn affidavit that...
Affidavit.
Yeah, that thing. Sorry. Okay. That, the postal supervisory officials, they basically wanted to backdate some votes. And according to the Pennsylvania law, you can only take the votes that are received until 8 p.m. on the election date. You cannot receive beyond that. And according to what he said, they were trying to receive more votes beyond that time and put another date and time. So this person, if he did that and he's lying, he could be persecuted, criminally persecuted. So that's one of the things that Republicans are saying, like, if this happened here, you need to count votes, you need to go and conduct further investigation, because it could be something weird going on.
What do you think, Zehavi?
But why would the Democrats cheat and not take the Senate with them? If they were going to cheat, wouldn't they want the whole barn? They wouldn't just want the cow. They'd want the whole thing, which is why. And it's not even just that. It's just there's no evidence for their allegations. It's just that they're being hypocritical, essentially, of what the Democrats were like 4 years ago.
Well, that's the thing. We're going to get into the potential evidence. We're going to get into hypocrisy a little later on in the show. But first, how did the media's predictions, analysis, and their calls influence the election? I mean, there were 145 million votes, and 75 million for Joe Biden, the most for a presidential candidate, 4 million more for Trump than in 2016. But again, did the media have an influence on that turnout? Did the media have an influence on Joe Biden winning or Trump losing?
I think the media for sure heightened the expectations of a Joe Biden blowout. I will concede, unlike some people, that the media for sure made the up to the ante for Joe Biden to have a blowout. And look, it wasn't a blowout, but if the results are to be believed, which I will believe them at this stage, Joe Biden turned around and got the voters and turned out new voters that he needed to. He has the most votes out of any single presidential candidate in history. Trump has the second most, but Trump only got 4 million more votes to me because more people voted. That's just the nature of the population growth.
Yeah, definitely the media has something to do with the results. And to be honest, this is the elections where I have seen more bias in the media from one side to the other side as well. Like, getting impartial information right now is very difficult. And for example, one of the things that I saw during the election is that Twitter, Facebook, they were all over fact checking everything. So it is kind of crazy when you imagine that, because, for example, there were some news channel who decided to cut Trump a speech, and that is like, from my point of view, is bad journalism, because regardless if you agree from one speech or not, like, the role as a journalist is to let it go through and then, explain your point of view if you disagree or not. But cutting the speech is actually just make people angrier and do have a counterproductive effect.
So the media making decisions, do you feel like they shouldn't then make predictions? Because, for example, even Fox News predicted that it was Arizona that went to Trump, and Trump had a fit. He called Rupert Murdoch and yelled at him. And Rupert Murdoch basically told him to. I mean, they retracted it at first, but Rupert essentially told him to F off. Do you think that media predictions have an impact on the final results?
I think the polls and predictions in general were one of the ones losing, because these elections results were unpredictable, I would say, for anybody. Like, it is an unusual election. The gap was really close, and yeah, like, they can predict, but like I say, in this case, it was quite unpredictable.
Zehavi?
They've been making election projections for years. 4 years ago, when Trump hadn't even been called for like half the states that he won by less amount of votes than Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, who was initially reluctant to call and concede until Obama actually called her and said, it's over, she still conceded. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of Democrats were unhappy for the rest of the 4 years, but Trump essentially was going along with the process, and once it became clear that it wasn't going to go his way, then the process is rigged, and now there's something shady going on. Like, it's childish, but it's not surprising, because childish behavior is what we've come to expect from Donald Trump.
Well, that now brings us to Donald Trump's response, the second portion of our discussion. How did he take it? I don't think he took it very well.
Well, he certainly looked happy for for election night, when it looked like things were going his way. His speech that he gave, I don't remember exactly what he said on election night, but the speech he gave the following day, I believe, where he basically called the entire election a fraud and corrupt, and there was cheating going on, was just filled with lies and complete untrue statements. And that's why even Fox News, that Donald Trump only speaks to, I don't know if he does anymore, but they cut him out, or they had to cut it off, because even they're like, this is ridiculous. And they're his staunchest supporters of a network. They're just as biased as CNN is for the left.
Anna, what did you think of his response?
Well, he wasn't happy. He certainly didn't expect this result. But, like I say, if he considers that there is a fraud, he will need to prove it. And that's the step to follow. And according to the U.S. Attorney General, they have until December 8th in order to, authorize. They need to check this irregularity, and it will be nationwide, and we will need to wait.
And you mentioned his claims of fraud. Let's talk about when he said stop the count. What does he mean by that? Stop the count. And what does it say that when he said that, he also declared himself the winner?
Bad strategy, bad idea, definitely. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, would you expect anything less from this person? But stop the count. He was losing. So if you stop the count, you'll lose in the popular either. He's down, I think, by 5 million votes. Mm-hmm. 5 million votes. Please try and look. He has every right to try to bring forward evidence if there are actual substantiated claims of voter fraud and what have you. But there's no evidence to suggest that it is. This is just a last minute effort to suck up oxygen.
Wow. Strong
I'm just glad that this end of an era. That's how I would put it.
Not so fast, though, because, I mean, look at the election of 2004. And it was, it was Bush and Gore. And
that was
Gore,
2000.
Sorry, 2000, yeah. It was Bush and Gore was determined the winner. And then 36 days later, they did a recount in the key state of Florida, and Bush was the winner.
There was a difference of 500 votes that were being contested and adjudicated. Donald Trump is losing the state of Wisconsin by over 20,000 votes. He's losing the state of Pennsylvania by, I think it's like 50,000 votes or something like that. Like, not small margins, basically. So... and then, like I said before, with the Senate, if they were going to cheat, wouldn't they want to take the whole Congress with them? Things aren't adding up.
There was Anna.
No, just to add that, like, I totally agree with you. Like, I will prefer just to wait until to see what the Supreme Court has to say, how these legal resources will end up, and it really depends on that. And we need to acknowledge that this is a very like unusual election. Like, it is in the midst of the pandemic. It was doing a lot of these votes were done by mail. Like, it is irregular, and you can find inconsistencies. Like I said before, we will need to wait.
And Zehavi, how do you think this whole process is gonna go forward?
Look, I think Trump's already made the claims that he's made, that this election, there's a lot of questions to be made and to ask about this. And like I said, I think if he believes and if he has substantial and actual evidence of voter fraud and corrupt activity and shady activity as far as the election goes, then I implore him, as I'm sure does anybody else in the United States, to bring it forward. But there's just no clear evidence to suggest that, and this is just exactly what would have happened last time had he lost. I think this was just we had to wait 4 years to see this.
Now, we do have a comment coming in from Samuel. He says, just because they didn't cheat on the House and Senate doesn't mean they did not cheat elsewhere. How do you respond?
Well, then they wouldn't be a very good cheater, because if they want to actually, enact their radical left-wing agenda, then they would take the Senate and confirm all the nominees and all the crazies that probably won't happen now if the Republicans hold it. And I think having a Republican Senate while you have a Democratic House and a Democratic White House, it's a good checks and balances of the system, having different parties. It's like here where you have a PC government provincially at Queen's Park and a liberal government at the federal level. Usually tends to even itself out that way. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think that's just a cop-out to me.
So, erring on the side of Trump, there was a poll conducted by McLaughlin and Associates that showed that 36% of Biden voters, or 4.6 of Biden's total vote, would not have voted for him had they known about the deal with his son Hunter. So, do you think that the media tried to cover up his alleged corruption with his son Hunter, and clearly that did have an impact on voters? Anna?
Definitely, yeah. Like, honestly, do you think CNN will show the dark side of Biden, to say an example? No. Like, let's be honest. I will take the example of the kids placed in cages near the border. Mm-hmm. This used to happen during the administration of Obama and Joe Biden. Did you see such a media outrage as you saw with the Trump administration? It wasn't the same. Like, it's obviously that for one side is more terrible for when the counterparty is the one doing it, And this is one of the situations. Like, if they knew that certain votes were going to be sacrificed, if they reported about Hunter Biden, then better to hide that part of the story and put it in the shadow, because that way they could they could risk these voters.
Do I believe there was a concerted effort to obstruct some sort of Hunter Biden brewing great scandal that was going to end all scandals to be? Probably not. I mean, it certainly looks sketchy what Facebook and Twitter were trying to do, but, how many times has Donald Trump done a lot of shady things over his career? And look, I'm not going to harp on Trump any more than I already have, because it's just ad nauseum at this point. But the Hunter Biden thing, I think it really leaves much to be desired. I don't think people care. I think this has no sort of...
But is it up to the media to decide what people should care about?
No, but if people cared enough, they'd be running in the streets the way that they care about other things. This is not a person or an issue that affects the policy direction or the direction, that period that the country, that the president wants to take.
But it affects the voter turnout, clearly, this specific potential scandal.
from one poll that suggests that there's more to be said, or that there was some sort of obstruction. I don't know. I think it could be an outlier. I'm not suggesting there's nothing to be investigated per se, but I don't really see what effect that has on Joe Biden's ability to be the president. The same way I didn't think Hillary Clinton's emails affected her ability to run a country. I just think she should have better, etiquette when it comes to how she runs her emails, but we're not going to go down that road.
I do think it has an impact because the way the media communicate things, it can send a message to people. If you demonize this person, if you actually use a very aggressive statement, and if you convince people this is fishy, this is wrong, and this is what happens with him and his son, people can actually be angry. But once again, it's the language and it's the communication that you use for that. If you prefer to low down the tone, if you prefer to, don't like what Facebook or Twitter did, that they try to hide the story or anything related to this, of course less people is going to find out, of course less people is going to feel outraged, and they are not going to feel impacted. But it depends on the communication and the language.
But there's no story. There was no story even when they tried to corroborate it. There was no story. It was just a fixation of a potential scandal that Donald Trump and his campaign wanted to perpetuate. That's the conclusion that I've come down to, and I think there's a lot of shady politicians in the United States who aren't Donald Trump. There's one thing Trump is. He's at least, he's a little bit more colorful than say Joe Biden and some of the other ones are. But I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that this is an actual thing, besides the media trying to kibosh the story and prevent people from seeing it.
Well, another potential scandal, and then we're going to get to another question. Actually, we're going to move that forward. But the key is, do you guys accept the results? Before you answer, we did ask our audience that on Instagram, and we had a great turnout. We asked our audience, do you accept the results of the U.S. 2020 elections? Anna, what are the results?
Well, 73% say yes, and 27% said no. And out of those 73% are 63 people, and 27%, 23 people.
Wow, so there's a huge divide between people that believe the results and people that don't. Now let's get to you guys. Anna, do you accept the results of the U.S. election?
I prefer to wait until all the legal resources are resolved.
And Zehavi?
Yeah, I do, actually. And I say this as someone who has been a scrutineer in numerous elections, including a by-election that took place during a pandemic, I think 2 weeks ago. So I know what to look out for. Look, I was not an election official in this election, so I'm not privy to the kind of things that they would see.
Damn, so we don't have the inside scoop?
Unfortunately, I don't have any good tea for you. But
okay, get out. Okay.
I do accept the results of the election. I think it's clear Joe Biden has a substantial lead from the popular vote. And I know that's not how they decide these things there, but look, if Hillary conceded and she was up by 2 million and still losing the popular vote, and she had the balls to, pardon my language, to concede and to acknowledge the reality of things, whether she thought there might have been a concerted effort to hack it from the Russians, whether you believe that or you don't. I don't think Trump's going to concede. I think Joe Biden's just going to say, okay, well, I'm going to get inaugurated and do my thing, be president, and Kamala Harris is out there making history and doing her thing, and they're going to get on with their lives.
That then takes us to the final portion of our discussion, which is, let's, for the sake of argument, or in reality, Joe Biden is the winner of the United States election. So what are the next couple of months going to look like, the transition period? Because like we said, Trump hasn't conceded yet. And I do want to point out a fun fact that Joe Biden is not the first vice president to become president. 14 presidents did so. For 8 of them, it came after the sitting president died, and only 4 former vice presidents were elected. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Van Buren, and the last one, George H.W. Bush, in 1988. And Gerald Ford was the only vice president to become president after resignation due to Nixon's resignation. So what do you think the next couple of months are going to be like, the transition period, like I asked?
So normally the process for transition is the incumbent, whether they were defeated or whether they are serving out the end of their term limit, usually notifies the bureaucracy, I guess we'll call it. And there's a reserved amount of funding to give an office to the president-elect and the vice president-elect. Trump has the clerk that runs that department that would give them that funding. Basically, it's a Trump appointment. So she said no, because obviously she's going to go with what the president says. But Joe Biden claims they're going to carry on. They don't need the funding. They can do it themselves. And I think once the Electoral College votes to actually award the Electoral College votes to the candidates, from there, I think the Congress approves it, and then they get inaugurated. I essentially see Trump playing the it's rigged card and screaming until he's blue in the face. But I already see the Democrats. They're already moving on. They're moving on.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because we have a comment from Marsha. She says the next couple of months are going to have a lot of crying and whining from Trump. Anna, do you agree with that?
Well, probably from Trump and probably from his supporters too. But, it is not as terrible as some people said that was going to be. I mean, I don't see any target on fire or property being, broke in the meantime. I think, honestly, Trump supporters are assuming better the situation than how the left would have assumed the situation. And yeah, like one of the things that I see that Biden is planning to do is the task force to face the pandemic. So that's one of the priorities that he has on his plan. But yeah, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see. If I will just laugh really, really bad if actually in this election the turnout determines that it's Trump the winning again. Like, I will just laugh.
Do you really see that as a possibility?
I see it as a possibility. Yep.
If that happens, I will go on air and I will. No, I don't know. I don't want to say anything I might regret. But if that happens, I will dare me to do something I wouldn't do. I don't know. Maybe walk outside of my house without a shirt or something crazy like that. But like,
whoa, guys.
Okay, no. But you need to do that on January. When it's really cold.
Yeah, on January 20th, when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are sworn in as the vice president and the president and vice president, I will be so full with glee that I will walk outside of my house without a t-shirt.
We need a picture of that and to post it in the Raben report.
Well,
okay?
If my gym progress is any better, I might have some luck there.
Well, apparently you already lost 30 pounds, so we got to see the results. Apparently, we got to see the results.
And in the heart of
Don't
winter.
stop the count. Don't stop the count on the pound loss. But so you say that you're going to be excited when they officially become president and vice president. What did you think of their victory speeches that took place on Saturday, November 7th, after they were announced to be the presumptive winners of the election?
I called my mother, because my mother, who votes the same way that I do, she's a conservative, fiscal conservative, believes in all that sort of stuff. Not social conservative, but it was a sigh of relief. She was like, I really have to just take this in for a second, because it's finally over, just the election period. But I watched the Vice President-elect Harris's speech with my mother, and look, there's things about Kamala Harris position-wise that I don't agree with, but if there's one thing I'm certain about, is she is a certified a bad A-double-S. I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah, we're not on network television.
Okay, she's a badass. I'm sorry. I love Kamala Harris. I think she's tough. I think she's smart. I thought her speech hit all the right tones. It was a historic speech, and she made a point in her speech that I wanted to point out. She made it to a point to thank all the women that came before her. She'll be the first woman in this office, but not the last. Mm-hmm. She made a point to not only thank the generations of women who came before her, but the generations of black women and Asian women who came before her, because as we were talking about before, black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and there's truth to it. Black women are some of the most mobilized, and they're some of the strongest activists in the Democratic Party. And Kamala Harris's election to the vice presidency is really a big testament to how hard and I feel so good for them, because people our age probably expect to see a woman president someday, but women who are my parents are in their 60s, but they figured they'd see a woman be president towards the end of their lives, but a woman of color as the vice president, especially following Donald Trump and all that's come with him in terms of rhetoric, it's a big day for them, and it was really something to watch, and I thought she gave a really good speech.
Anna, what did you think of Kamala's speech as well as Joe Biden's speech? You know, when he ran out, they made it into a meme.
That.
They memed it like he was coming to be WWE wrestler. Listen, the guy's 78 and he ran out like that.
The whole time I was like, Sleepy Joe, no more.
Yeah, he's not sleeping anymore.
In better shape than Trump.
Better shape than me at this point, the way he ran out, to be honest. But Anna?
Yeah, well, actually, I just don't like the identity politics in general. Like, I don't agree that, because we had the first female black vice president, that's irrelevant for me. And I'm speaking as a woman, as a minority. Like, if you're recognized, I want it to be recognized because you are good, because you're the appropriate person. Like, your race, your color, your gender, your religion, for me, is irrelevant.
So do you think that it was a mistake for Joe Biden to select his running mate specifically for them to be a woman?
If it was for that reason only, yes. If he was because he actually thinks she is completely qualified and she's going to be an amazing vice president, okay, then go for it. But just don't bring race or gender, for me, that's...
Do you think she's qualified?
I'm not sure about that. Let's take a look to her record. When she was in California as a prosecutor, she put people in jail for,
I love
marijuana.
having this conversation. I'm ready for this one.
And she blocked evidence from people who were sentenced to death. When you do that kind of stuff, I don't know. But once again, if she was a prosecutor, she's probably specialized in criminal law. I'm a lawyer myself, and from my experience, people in criminal law, they're hard. They are badass, and they are treating with criminals. So they need to, have a strong fist, to say that way.
Zehavi, you apparently love having this conversation. Why is that?
I wouldn't say I love, but I think I've had this conversation a number of times, especially since Kamala Harris ran for president herself, and she fizzled out. But but what I'll say about her record is this: she was a prosecutor. She's an independent a member of the law of the judiciary. So you know this better than I do, since you're a lawyer. But it's not her law. It's not her job to legislate from her position as a prosecutor and as the attorney general. I mean, that's sort of how you interpret how you want to execute an argument or a court case like that. But it was not her job to legislate and in regards to her record for throwing kids and parents in jail for truancy. Her reasoning behind that was school attendance rate in the black community, which she comes from, was so low that she figured if there was some sort of mechanism that can get kids to school so they would be off the street, this was it. And obviously no one's going to get it perfectly. I disagree with her putting people in jail for marijuana, and now she supports the legalization of it, which I do too. Mm-hmm. But that's how politics works. You evolve over time, and if the intentions are good and if the work is there and the intention is there, then it's fine. But I don't think Joe picked her on the basis of her gender. I think he said he was going to pick a woman anyway, and I think most people expected him to pick a woman whether he committed to doing that or not. It was really once the racial uprising that happened following George Floyd, really cemented that it would be such an important thing for him to choose a person of color.
Yeah, but don't you think that it's funny that considering the situation with George Floyd, he selected a former prosecutor? Like, you know, if you're in a movement or if this situation led to the movement of defunding the police, electing a prosecutor is like the last thing you need on that matter. Because this woman was basically acting as a law enforcement in California.
Look, far be it for me to decide what Kamala Harris's record or what about her record should, you know, I don't think it in any way disqualifies her from serving as vice president. Joe Biden, I'm sure, what was it, the 1994 crime bill that she attacked him. I don't think it was for the crime bill that she attacked him on, but she went after him in the Democratic debate. So that's the nature of politics, is, you know, especially from a primary perspective. But the other choice for him that he was going to choose to be his vice president was either Elizabeth Warren, who for me is a complete non-starter because she's 100 and she's a socialist.
I mean, he's 78 though, so
I know, but she's a socialist, so that, like, you know. But in any case, and then Susan Rice, who was basically a part of the entire Benghazi thing, and I don't think he was going to relitigate that. Plus, Kamala was vetted as a candidate when she ran, so I like her.
So what do you think some of the first policies or changes that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to implement when they get into office? They're starting now. I mean, they're already planning changes. What do you think they're going to be?
Task number one has to be COVID. It has to be getting the pandemic under control, I think they want to implement a national mask mandate. I don't know what the exact details are with their COVID task force, but the fact that that's their priority versus I won the real election, the legal election, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, the fact that you can see that they're like, okay, well, if you want to go to court, fine, we'll settle this in court. But like, the fact that that's your priority and you're the incumbent president and you have 2 months or so of a lame duck session to actually do something about it and you didn't, like, bye.
Bye, Den, apparently, a lot of people are saying. Yeah. Anna?
Well, you know, I think, like I mentioned before, that the task force of the pandemic is one of their priorities. Something interesting enough is that Trump, during his last debate with Biden, he actually said, the vaccine is coming and is soon going to be released with Pfizer. He actually said that in the debate, so he actually nailed it. And, you know, regarding the task force, I don't know how a mandate face mask is going to work with Americans because we know how they are, and a lot of people are going to refuse. Actually, I have American friends that have refused it all this time.
Are they anti-maskers?
Yes, because they say that violates their liberty.
Okay, well, do they want to get a disease and die? Like, that's basically what it comes down to. I know, like, people have different opinions over, you know, if it's like the flu, if the death rates are not so high, if people are just getting it but they're not dying, like, then, like, you know, we can just get on with life. But in March, we were basically barricaded in our homes and we thought we couldn't do anything. Whereas in June, we were basically eating, drinking inside, going to the gym, acting like nothing was really new about the world except the fact that we had to wear a mask when we went inside.
Do you think, you know, one of the final questions I'm going to ask you guys, do you think that the plan all along was for Joe Biden to win and then step down and let Kamala become president? I mean, if he lasts all 4 years, he's going to be 82, which is already, he's the oldest president ever elected. So do you think that that's the plan?
I think that's going to be one of the cases that you mentioned before with the presidents, that a lot of vice presidents came out as the president after, you know, serving as vice president on their party. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I would be surprised if Joe Biden actually lasts these 4 years. I'm going to be honest. And, you know, if not, we will have the first Black American president, female. The first Black female president. Yeah.
I've struggled with what I think is going to happen. I think the most likely scenario is that Joe will say, it's time for me to, you know, he already indicated it. I'm running as a transitional president, as a bridge to sort of the next generation of leaders. And obviously Kamala Harris's name recognition just went through the roof this weekend. And, will he resign before the next election and then she becomes vice president? I don't know. I think he might want to just let her kind of battle it for herself, because that's the fair way. She kind of has an unfair advantage over everybody else now being the vice president. But it's really who would challenge her. It would definitely come from the left. Mm-hmm. I don't see anyone in the moderate lane if she runs, which I can't see why she wouldn't. The challenge that she would have in a primary, if she is challenged, would come from the left.
Very interesting. So you think the left is going to be her biggest competitor, not the right?
In the primary, 100%. And that's how it's always been. The primary is always a challenge dealing with the left. It was a pain in the side for Hillary. It was a pain in the side for Joe Biden.
Do you think that, lastly, if the lawsuits happen and Joe Biden is still, shown to be the winner, do you think that it's going to be a two-term presidency? Do you think that America is going to want Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for 2 terms, or is it going to be another one-term presidency like Trump?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if by 2024 the Republican comes with a stronger candidate, and they're going to take every failure that the Democrats are going to do during this period and take it as their strength. And as we saw, a lot of America is still red. So, yeah.
I'm waiting for the final tally and all the shenanigans before I give my hot take of what happened and why. But I think the one thing I underestimated was the Republican turnout. A lot of people who were going to vote for the Republican candidate, even though they weren't going to vote for Trump, like the success of the Republicans at the Senate level and at the House level. Democrats thought with their progressive agenda that AOC and the Squad were essentially promoting was the big vote getter. It bit them in the butt in places like Virginia, like Florida, places where people believe in liberalism, but not in this communism. Like I understand the frustration of the Latino community and why they voted for Trump, because they came from that type of politics. So yeah. I get it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get it.
And to top things off, Marcia adds, if Trump won't leave the White House, just turn it into a Trump casino and it will be empty in no time. So I guess that's, but it is concerning. Like if he tries not to leave the White House, I mean, again, we're going to have to wait and see the results. We're going to have to wait and see, what happens with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their policies. But that was our show for this week. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and that messaged us live. Zehavi, thank you so much for joining the panel once again this week.
My pleasure. I'm so glad this dragged on for an entire week.
Well, again, we are so happy to have you. And Anna, thank you as always for being here.
Thank you for having me. Like, this topic is so good. Like, it's so crazy and it's always evolving. We're going to see maybe, I don't know, we're going to have another show regarding the U.S. election phase 3 on December. Who knows?
Yeah, you know what? The rest of the season is just going to be on the U.S. election, and we're going to get rid of our entire audience because nobody wants to hear about this thing anymore. But of course, we had to do a debrief. We'd also like to congratulate Moralia via on winning last week's contest sponsored by Primitive Power Training. Please enjoy your $75 Amazon gift card, and thank you, as well as thank you to everyone that entered for your support of the Raben Report. A brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, same people, including Christina. Have a great day, everyone.